My ex-girlfriend was full of regret after calling off our wedding. At our engagement party, my childhood sweetheart publicly broke off our engagement, arm in arm with my nemesis. After that, my family terminated all our business partnerships with hers. Her company was looking for investors. My dad said, "Sorry, we don't bother with any project worth less than a small fortune." The brand she owned wanted a celebrity endorsement. My sister said, "Apologies, but that's beneath my pay grade." Her company faced a crisis and needed a loan to stay afloat. I said, "Sure, we can lend you the money, but we'll need to be clear about the interest and late fees up front. What happens if you can't pay it back?" My parents just scoffed. "It's a lost cause. Why bother lending them anything? Just let that pathetic company go bankrupt." On the day of our engagement party, Sophia Vance brought my nemesis, Kevin Miller. Kevin and I had never seen eye to eye. We were not only business rivals, but he also relentlessly pursued Sophia, fully aware that she and I were supposed to be in love. But given the importance of the occasion, I held my tongue. It wasn't until the moment she took the microphone, right before the official announcement, that I felt my brow furrow. For the first time, I actually hoped she would be the one to call it off, because just 10 minutes earlier, I had personally seen Sophia slide her foot onto Kevin's thigh under the table. The Harrisons are a business dynasty, one of the most respected families in Denver. Everyone in our circle knew that Sophia and I were childhood sweethearts, with an understanding between our families since we were kids. And today was supposed to be our engagement day. How could Sophia be so reckless, pulling a stunt like this today of all days? I frowned, about to grab the microphone from her, but she beat me to it, speaking with a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you all know why we've gathered here tonight. Liam and I grew up together, and our families arranged our marriage long ago. And today, I have a wonderful announcement to make." A buzz went through the crowd. They all knew Sophia and I had been together for years. Today was the day we made it official. But instead, Sophia turned to look at Kevin Miller and held out her hand. "Kevin, darling, come on up." As if he'd been waiting for this cue all night, Kevin smoothed his suit jacket and shot me a mocking glance as he walked past. I lowered my gaze, raised my glass, and took a slow sip of champagne. I knew exactly what Sophia was about to do. I just couldn't believe she had the audacity. Ignoring the stunned faces in the audience, Sophia took Kevin's arm, her smile sickeningly sweet. "I won't lie to you all. The truth is, my engagement to Liam was just a silly joke between our parents from when we were kids. The man I'm truly going to marry is Kevin Miller. We've already set a date for our wedding, on the 10th of next month, and we hope you all can be there to celebrate with us." The room fell dead silent. Every eye in the place darted toward me to gauge my reaction. I just smiled, holding back my little sister, Tessa, who looked ready to storm the stage and slap Sophia, and began to applaud politely. "Well done. I applaud your courage," I said. "I wish you both the best." Sophia seemed stunned by my calm reaction for a second, but then she quickly broke into a smile. "I knew you'd be a good sport, Liam. You have to come to the wedding next month. You promise?" I offered a non-committal smile, not bothering to reply. My sister Tessa, however, had reached her limit. She yanked her arm free from my grasp, shot up onto the stage, and delivered a resounding slap across Sophia's face. "You have some nerve. You humiliate my brother and then invite him to your wedding?" she seethed. "Who do you think you are?" The slap caught Sophia completely by surprise. She cupped her cheek, looking utterly pathetic. Kevin, enraged, pulled Sophia behind him and raised his hand to strike Tessa back. But before he could, I caught his wrist in a firm grip. "Kevin, don't forget where you are," I said quietly. His face went pale with rage, but he slowly lowered his arm. Everyone here knew this event was being held in a ballroom owned by the Harrison family. Only an absolute idiot would dare to touch my sister on our home turf. Tessa snorted, shaking out her wrist. She turned to me and pouted. "Bro, her face is so thick it made my hand sting." A few snickers rose from the crowd, and I had to suppress a smile myself. Outwardly, though, I gave her a stern look. "Go get that looked at. Have you forgotten who you are? Are you trying to end up on the front page of the tabloids?" My sister Tessa is an A-list actress, an award-winning star. Even though we were morally in the right, she had thrown the first punch. If news of this leaked, it would inevitably have some blowback on her career. Thankfully, Tessa isn't clueless. She stuck her tongue out, shot one last glare at Sophia, and then turned and walked away. I shook my head with a sigh and started damage control. I walked over to Sophia, who was looking at me with hopeful eyes, as if expecting a few words of comfort. Instead, I simply took the microphone from her hand and addressed the remaining guests. "Everyone, my apologies. It seems the Miller and Vance families couldn't afford a decent venue of their own, so they had to hijack ours to announce their engagement." I continued, For anyone here for business, please make your way to the VIP lounge upstairs. My father is on his way and will be with you shortly." At my words, the guests began to file out, and the color drained from Sophia's face. The Harrisons are a powerful family with deep and complex ties throughout the business world. No one was going to disrespect me at a moment like this, especially since my father was returning from expanding our international markets, a move that would only elevate our family's standing even further. As the last of the guests departed, I turned to leave as well. But at the doorway, Sophia's father, Mr. Vance, caught my wrist. "Liam," I turned to face him. Despite the contempt I felt, I maintained a polite exterior. "Mr. Vance, what is it?" Mr. Vance looked at me and sighed, a picture of remorse. "I had no idea Sophia would be so reckless. I'll give her a stern talking to when we get home. I hope you won't hold today's events against us." "No idea?" A cynical smile touched my lips. He was a cunning old fox, trying to wash his hands of the whole affair with a few simple words. But Sophia was his only daughter, spoiled and coddled her entire life. There was no way he wasn't in on it. I gave him a look, tired of the charade. "You make a fair point, Mr. Vance, but this is a matter of the Harrison family's honor. That's a conversation you should have with my father." With that, I turned and walked away, not bothering to look back at his thunderous expression. Mr. Vance and my father were childhood friends. They'd started their careers together, with my dad helping him out immensely along the way. It was Mr. Vance who had proposed the engagement between Sophia and me to solidify their bond, and ever since, the Harrisons had poured resources into supporting the Vances. But it turned out the Vances weren't just ungrateful. They were willing to publicly humiliate us without a second thought. My father values our family's reputation above all else. This wasn't going to be over quickly. Sure enough, when I arrived home that evening, he was already in a full-blown rage. "The Vances have lost their minds. Have they forgotten how they made their fortune in the first place?" he roared. "Cancel every single contract we have with them, effective immediately. We'll see how long they last in Denver after this." I was about to say something when our butler announced that Mr. Vance and Sophia were at the door. My father scowled, ready to have them thrown out, but I stopped him. "They're still family friends of many years. If we make a scene, it reflects poorly on both of us," I said. "Besides, if they don't witness the consequences firsthand, how will they ever truly learn to regret what they've done?" My words seemed to calm him down. He gave a cold snort and nodded for the butler to show them in. A moment later, Mr. Vance entered, dragging a sullen-looking Sophia behind him. Before Mr. Vance could utter a word, my father poured him a cup of tea, filling it right to the brim. In our tradition, a full cup is a polite way of telling a guest it's time to leave. The color drained from Mr. Vance's face, but I pretended not to notice as I handed him the cup. "Mr. Vance, please have some tea." Remembering why he was there, he took a tentative sip and then spoke, his voice apologetic. "Liam, I've brought Sophia here tonight to apologize to you." He then shot a meaningful glance at his daughter. But Sophia didn't apologize. Instead, her eyes welled up with tears, as if she were the one who had been wronged. "I'm not going to apologize," she declared, clenching her fists with the righteous fury of someone fighting for love against all odds. "All I did was choose the person I truly love. What's so wrong with that? Even if you had forced me to marry Liam, I never would have loved him. I would have cheated on him eventually anyway." The words were barely out of her mouth before Mr. Vance slammed his hand on the table, unable to contain himself. "Insolence! How dare you say such things?" Sophia flinched, her defiance dissolving into quiet sobs. I, on the other hand, found the whole display rather amusing. "Mr. Vance," I said, my voice perfectly calm and unaffected, "since Sophia has clearly found a better option for herself, there's no need for us to force the issue." Mr. Vance stared at me for a second, then a relieved smile spread across his face, as if he'd completely misinterpreted my meaning. "I knew you were a reasonable young man, Liam. You always valued our history. In that case, I have a proposal. Would you be willing to hear it?" I glanced at my father before turning back to Mr. Vance and nodding. "Let's hear it," I said. "Well, my thinking is our families have been partners for so long. We can let our existing contracts stand, and as a gesture of goodwill, I'm willing to concede 30% of our profits to you. How does that sound? How does that sound?" It sounded like he was living in a fantasy world. "That sounds perfectly acceptable," I said, my smile cold. "You just finished renovating your new mansion, correct? How about this, you move out and give it to me, and while you're at it, transfer $50 million to my account. What do you think of that?" Mr. Vance's smile froze on his face. "Liam, you must be joking," he stammered. "Weren't you joking with me first?" I replied, my expression turning to ice. Let's be honest, Mr. Vance. Our partnership has always been more like a charity case. Even if you concede 30%, you're still the one making all the money off our name. More importantly, what on earth makes you think we have any intention of continuing to work with you? At that, the blood drained from his face. What are you saying? He whispered. I let out a cold laugh, picked up the remote, and switched on the TV to the financial news network. Unsurprisingly, the top story was about us. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Sophia Vance, heiress to the Vance Corporation, publicly calls off engagement to Liam Harrison at their party, announces marriage to rival CEO Kevin Miller. Another followed immediately after. In response, Harrison Industries has terminated all existing contracts with the Vance Corporation. Market analysts predict significant volatility in Vance stock. Investors are advised to proceed with caution. As the news anchor detailed the events, Mr. Vance's face grew darker with every word. Liam, what is the meaning of this? He demanded. You're severing all ties over one little incident? I let out a sharp, cold laugh, dropping the polite act entirely. Mr. Vance, I think you're mistaken, I said, my voice like steel. This is not a little incident. I rose to my feet, walked over to him, and tossed a thick stack of project files onto the table in front of him. You know exactly how much money the Vance Corporation has made over the years, all thanks to the support of the Harrison family. If she didn't want to get married, I could have understood that. We could have ended things quietly. But to do it like this, without any discussion, publicly dragging the Harrison name through the mud, that's going too far, don't you think? He had no response. His face was grim, knowing full well we were in the right. My father scoffed, his eyes glinting with scorn. Exactly. You were in such a hurry to cut us loose. I'd wager you've already struck a deal with the Millers, haven't you? He leaned forward. I just wonder if you're prepared to be swallowed whole by a shark like Kevin Miller. My father's words hit their mark. Mr. Vance gasped for air, too humiliated to remain a moment longer, and stormed out of the room. Sophia just stood there, looking lost. I gave her a cold glance. Your father's gone. Aren't you leaving? She snapped back to reality, her expression hardening. It was as if she'd completely forgotten all the years of support the Harrisons had given her family. You just wait, she spat. I'll be just fine without the Harrisons. And with that, she turned and followed her father out the door. Tessa rolled her eyes, and I shook my head with a private, knowing smile. I'd been rivals with Kevin Miller for years. I knew him better than anyone. Leaving aside his messy personal life, his purely opportunistic nature meant there was zero chance he was actually in love with Sophia. I was willing to bet it wouldn't be long before Sophia came crawling back to me. And just as I predicted, she showed up at my office 3 days later. Gone was the defiant pride from our last encounter. Now her face was etched with embarrassment. She fidgeted nervously when she saw me approach. Liam, she began, using my first name with a familiar tone. Don't call me that. I cut in, my voice all business. Since you've made your decision to marry Kevin Miller, it's best we maintain a professional distance. Now, what can I do for you? A flicker of humiliation crossed her face before she finally spoke, her words hesitant. Kevin's company has a new product that needs a celebrity endorsement. We've reached out to all the suitable talent, but they've all turned us down. The budget is a little low. She trailed off. So, I was hoping to ask Tessa. I took a sip of my coffee, finding her audacity almost comical. You want Tessa to be your spokesperson? Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with hope. I couldn't help but laugh. I don't get involved in Tessa's career decisions. That's a conversation you'll have to have with her directly. Sophia's lips tightened, but she said nothing. A suspicion dawned on me. Don't tell me, I said, testing the waters. She blocked your number, didn't she? She nodded, her voice small. I can't get through to her. She looked genuinely hurt, as if she couldn't believe we would cut her off so completely. I, however, felt a surge of pride. That was my sister, all right? Still, to save her from complete humiliation, I put on a show of being helpful and pulled out my phone. Here, I'll call her for you, I said, tapping on my contacts. But before I could even hit dial, the office door swung open and Tessa herself walked in. Don't bother, she said, her voice sharp. The answer is no. At the sight of Tessa, Sophia instinctively touched her cheek, the one that had been slapped, and quickly got to her feet. Tessa, Sophia began. Whoa there, Tessa cut her off, looking Sophia up and down with undisguised contempt. Are we on a first-name basis now? I don't recall giving you permission to call me that. A wave of awkwardness washed over Sophia's face, but she managed to plaster on a strained smile. My apologies, I was being too familiar, she said. Tessa just scoffed and sat down next to me, crossing her legs elegantly. Look, Sophia, We've known each other a long time, so I'm just going to be blunt with you. With the kind of money you're offering, you'd be lucky to get a minor TikTok influencer. I'm an award-winning actress. What in the world makes you think I'd endorse your product for pocket change? She said. If you were still going to be my sister-in-law, we could talk. But what are you to me now? When did your skin get so thick? With every word Tessa spoke, Sophia's face grew paler, until she looked like she was about to burst into tears. I stood and offered her a tissue. Thinking of the years we'd known each other, I decided to give her a piece of advice. Sophia, if you really want a proper endorsement, your best bet is to get Kevin to increase the budget, I said gently. If he truly cared about you, he wouldn't put you in such an impossible position. You should be more careful. As soon as the words left my mouth, she looked up at me, her eyes red and brimming with tears. You're lying, she cried. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at Tessa. Kevin told me this was the absolute highest he could go with the budget. It's obvious you're just trying to make things difficult for me. She turned her glare on me. Liam, I thought after all these years, our friendship meant something. But not only are you refusing to help, you're actively trying to sabotage my relationship with Kevin? You're despicable. Me, despicable? Her words were so absurd I almost laughed. It's true what they say, malice isn't the real danger, stupidity is. My expression hardened. I picked up my desk phone and buzzed security. Please escort Miss Vance out of the building. Right away, sir. The security guards moved toward Sophia, and within a minute, she was gone. I rubbed my temples, ready to get back to work, but was met with Tessa's teasing smirk. That didn't go so well, did it, big brother? I sighed, about to respond, when she leaned in, her eyes sparkling with gossip. On the bright side, I have some good news for you, she whispered. The Vance Corporation is on the verge of bankruptcy. I looked at her, surprised. I knew it was coming, but I hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Even though we had been propping them up for years, Mr. Vance was a cunning old fox who had been in the game for decades. I figured he'd have a few tricks left. Seeing the confusion on my face, Tessa patted my shoulder. Dad's in a meeting with Mr. Vance right now, talking about a potential investment. Why don't you go see for yourself? I hesitated for a moment before deciding to go have a look. When I entered my father's office, it was clear Mr. Vance had already made his pitch. A flicker of embarrassment crossed his face when he saw me. Ah, Liam, you're here. I gave him a slight nod and took a seat beside my father. My father was pretending to review a document, but the impatient drumming of his fingers on the desk told me everything I needed to know. He was getting tired of this. Sure enough, after another minute, my father set the proposal aside. I'm sorry, Vance, my father said with a dry chuckle, making no effort to hide his amusement. This project of yours is just too small scale. We don't bother with anything worth less than a small fortune. I'm simply not interested. Mr. Vance's face darkened into a scowl. As if on cue, Tessa, ever the pot stirrer, chimed in from the side. He's right, Mr. Vance. You know what they say, she said sweetly. You can lend a friend $1 million or even 10 million, but you can never lend them 100. The implication was clear. If you need to borrow such a small amount, you must be truly desperate. I had to suppress a laugh. In the past, our joint ventures with Mr. Vance were in the hundreds of millions. Now he was here begging for a fraction of that. He was clearly at the end of his rope. My father stood up, shaking his head with mock sympathy. Vance, my friend, if you're really in a bind, why don't you go to Kevin Miller? He suggested. The Millers might not be in our league, but he is your future son-in-law. I'm sure he'd be happy to help you out of a jam, right? The 1-2 punch from my father and sister left Mr. Vance red-faced and sputtering. After a long, awkward silence, he managed a forced laugh and a nod. Yes, of course. I'll talk to him, he mumbled. Well, I'll let you get back to it. I won't take up any more of your time. With that, he practically fled the office as if he were being chased. My father watched him go and let out a cold snort. Thinking about the long history between our families, I hesitated for a moment before speaking. Dad, I began. I know what he did, but you two were childhood friends. Are you sure about being this ruthless? My father looked at me, his expression hardening into pure contempt. That's exactly what infuriates me, he snapped. Even you remember our history, but what about him? He didn't just stab us in the back, he twisted the knife. Seeing how agitated he was, I suspected there was more to the story. Tessa and I exchanged a look, and I prompted him, what else happened? And then, through my father's furious explanation, I finally understood the whole sordid secret. It turned out that years ago, on a major joint project, my father had intentionally funneled all the profits to the Vance family, giving them the capital to build their own company. But Mr. Vance, despite his unassuming appearance, was anything but simple. He'd pocketed all the profits, but instead of investing in his company, he'd been quietly selling off his own shares for years. The Vance Corporation today was nothing more than an empty shell. And suddenly, the reason for breaking the engagement became crystal clear. The Vances thought that by aligning with my rival, Kevin Miller, they could use his resources to help take down the Harrisons and then claim a piece of the spoils for themselves. But Kevin Miller was no fool. His only reason for agreeing to the marriage was to exploit the Vances connection to us, hoping to find a weakness he could use to destroy the Harrison empire. Both sides were playing a dangerous game, and it was obvious the Vances had been outmaneuvered. Now, facing total ruin, they had come crawling back to us, hoping for a miracle. After hearing the whole story, I could only shake my head. It's like watching sharks eat each other. The Vances will be nothing but a memory in this town soon. They brought it on themselves, my father snorted. Then, as if a thought just occurred to him, he turned to me. By the way, with Sophia calling everything off like that, are you honestly not heartbroken? For a moment, his question caught me off guard. Heartbroken? Not really. Sophia and I had grown up together, but I knew her too well. My feelings for her were never truly romantic. I'd always seen her more as a sister. If the marriage hadn't been a strategic move to strengthen our family's business ties, I probably wouldn't have agreed to it in the first place. Even when I saw her with Kevin under the table, I felt it was improper, but I didn't feel the sting of jealousy or anger. My feelings for Sophia were mostly just pity. I sighed. Honestly, I'm fine. It's just, we grew up together. It's sad to see her make such self-destructive choices. I added with a slight smile. Besides, it's not like I'm going to have trouble finding someone else. My father burst out laughing at that. He clapped me on the shoulder, looking genuinely pleased. That's my boy, just like your old man. I just shook my head, not wanting to encourage his ego any further. As it turned out, I was right. I did find the perfect partner. Her name was Ava, and I met her at the office. She was a new hire in the secretarial pool, and since I needed a new assistant, HR assigned her to my office. To my surprise, Ava seemed to fall for me instantly. She began a relentless, charming pursuit, wanting to be by my side every moment of the day. Looking at her determined face, I had to sigh. You know my history, right? I asked her one day. I had a fiancé. Doesn't that bother you? Ava just snorted, her beautiful face radiating confidence. Why would I mind that? Some other woman was blind enough to let you go. I'm not. I know what I want, and I want you. I was momentarily speechless. Before I could respond, she closed the distance between us in a single, fluid motion. She swung her leg over and settled onto my lap, her warm breath ghosting across my skin as she leaned in. Liam, she whispered, are you telling me you feel absolutely nothing for me? The proximity was overwhelming, and my first instinct was to pull away. But before I could, Ava's hand came up to cup my jaw, holding me in place. The next second, her lips were on mine. I froze, my mind a complete blank. In all my years with Sophia, the most intimate we had ever been was holding hands. Just as I was about to push Ava away, my office door flew open. Sophia's shattered voice filled the room. Liam, what are you doing? I snapped back to reality, gently pulling Ava off my lap and protectively to my side. I turned and fixed Sophia with an icy stare. Who gave you permission to enter without knocking? My tone was so cold it seemed to startle her. She stared at me for a second, and then her eyes filled with tears of indignation. Liam, are you really yelling at me? For another woman? She cried. What do you take me for? Looking at Sophia's face, I felt nothing but a rising tide of irritation. I took Ava's hand in mine and spoke, leaving no room for misunderstanding. This is my girlfriend. I'd appreciate it if you showed her some respect. I let my words sink in. You and I are nothing to each other anymore. My words struck her like a physical blow. Her lips trembled, and tears began to fall. I opened my mouth to speak, but Ava stepped forward. Looking perfectly composed, she offered Sophia a tissue and crouched down in front of her. Listen, sweetie, Ava said, her voice calm but firm. The first lesson of adulthood is learning when to let go. You're the one who called off the wedding. You don't have the right to stand here and question him now. She added, all this crying and shouting, it's just embarrassing. Sophia's sobs hitched, and she finally looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I got emotional. I waved a hand dismissively, indicating she should just say what she came to say. She took a few deep breaths, struggling to compose herself, and then spoke through a choked sob. I came because I need your help. Help again? My brow furrowed, and my immediate instinct was to refuse. But she spoke again before I could. Liam, I know you don't want to help me, she said, her voice gaining a strange edge. But don't you forget, it's because of you that my family is in this mess. I was so stunned by her words that I couldn't move. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The Sophia I remembered was spoiled, yes, but she wasn't delusional. I never imagined she could become so twisted. Any last shred of sympathy I had for her evaporated in that moment. My face went cold, and I gave her a smile that didn't reach my eyes. All right, tell me, what kind of help do you need? I need you to lend me $50 million, she said, her tone utterly entitled. My father's company is about to go under, she explained. We need the capital to rebuild. I stared at her for a long moment, and then I started to laugh. Of course, I said, but we'll have to be very clear about the interest rates and late fees up front. I leaned in. After all, the Harrisons are not a charity. In the end, I didn't lend her the money. If she had been willing to sign a formal loan agreement and discuss terms, she wouldn't have left empty-handed. But it was clear she had no intention of ever paying it back. The Fiancées had been dependent on the Harrisons for so long, they'd started to believe our money was their own. Everything that followed unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. The Vance Corporation went bankrupt, and Sophia was unceremoniously dumped by Kevin Miller. Even though I no longer had any feelings for her, the memory of what I saw one night still makes my heart ache for her. It was at a business gala. Sophia was there on Kevin's arm, but the vibrant, excited girl was gone, replaced by someone with a hollow, indifferent expression. When Kevin saw me, a look of pure disgust crossed his face. Liam, fancy seeing you here. I just smiled, not dignifying him with a response. In the preceding months, the Harrisons had applied relentless pressure on his company. Now, the Millers, just like the Fiancées, were on the brink of total collapse. Kevin Miller was beneath my notice. Stung by my indifference, Kevin snorted and pulled Sophia away. A few minutes later, I saw him leading her over to a much older businessman. I recognized the man. He was heading a major project that was currently open for bids. It was Kevin's last hope. I lowered my gaze, a part of me wanting to intervene. But then I remembered Sophia's venomous accusations from 3 months prior, and I stayed where I was. What's on your mind? Ava's voice brought me back. She came to my side and linked her arm through mine. You're not still hung up on your ex-fiancé, are you? She teased gently. Of course not, I said, snapping out of my reverie and smiling down at her. After all, you're the one who taught me that the most important thing in life is to always look forward. Ava gave me a playful nudge, and a real smile spread across my face. She was right. The Fiancées, Sophia, they were all just a chapter in my past. My future was standing right here beside me.